It was past 8 when I finally left the construction site. My body was heavy, my eyes dry, my thoughts slow. It was the kind of exhaustion that makes you forget where the road ends and you begin. The highway stretched out in a gray, endless line beneath the dim pulse of my headlights, a tunnel of asphalt cutting through miles of forest. My name is Ethan Cole, and that night, all I wanted was home. My wife Clara, my 2 kids, and the sweet relief of silence. Around 11:30, the fuel light blinked on, snapping me from my trance. A few miles ahead, a small gas station appeared like a promise in the dark, humming under a single row of fluorescent lights. Inside, everything smelled like oil, burnt coffee, and rain. The clerk behind the counter was young, maybe 20, with dark skin and a hoodie pulled up over his head. His eyes were half asleep but seemed to watch everything. His name tag read Marcus. He scanned my coffee and said nothing, just slid it across the counter. I tried to sound casual, maybe a little too loud. "You know any shortcuts to the city?" That woke him up. He leaned forward, his voice dropping low like he was sharing a secret. "Maybe. Depends how brave you are." He pointed at my phone's map, his finger tapping the screen. 15 miles down, the highway forks. Right takes you the long way, the way you know. Left. That's an old service road, straight through the forest. Saves you 40, maybe 45 minutes. He paused, looking me right in the eye. "Just watch for deer." That sounded good enough to a tired man desperate to get home. 45 minutes? That was a lifetime. I thanked him and stepped back into the night. The air was cold and metallic. I could taste the fog on my tongue. 15 minutes later, I saw the fork, just as he'd said. The big green sign pointed right, toward the bright living highway. Safety, light, and reason. To the left, a narrow strip of cracked road dove into pure blackness, swallowed completely by the trees. There were no signs, no lamps, just a mouth in the woods. I hesitated, but the thought of my own bed, of seeing my family sooner, made the decision for me. I turned left. Instantly, the world changed. The steady hum of distant traffic vanished, leaving a ringing in my ears. The only sound was the crunch of tires on broken pavement and gravel. The canopy of trees above sealed shut, their branches weaving a net so tight it erased the sky. My high beams pierced maybe 20 feet ahead, carving a shifting, claustrophobic tunnel through the dark. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, oppressive, like the road itself was listening. I kept driving, slower now. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I checked my phone. No signal. Of course. The minutes stretched, becoming directionless and elastic. Every curve in the road felt the same. Every gnarled tree looked identical to the last. Was I even moving forward? Then, something moved. A quick, dark shape darted across the beam of my headlights. Low to the ground, impossibly fast, and then it was gone. I hit the brakes hard, the truck skidding slightly on the slick pavement. My heart was a drum against my ribs. I stared into the darkness, but there was nothing. Just the fog dancing and swirling in my lights. I told myself it was an animal, a deer, like the kid said, or a coyote. But the forest felt closer now, pressing against the windows, whispering in the seams of the truck's frame. The air inside the cab smelled wrong, like rust and damp earth, a smell like something old and forgotten. I drove another mile, maybe 2, when the dense trees finally thinned and the road curved sharply to the right. And that's when I saw it, and my blood ran cold. A house. It was sitting directly across the road, from ditch to ditch, blocking my path completely. It was a simple house, yellow siding, white shutters, 1 floor, perfectly, horribly ordinary. But there was no driveway, no mailbox, no yard. It was as if it had simply grown out of the asphalt, which ran straight into its front step. And the door was open, wide open, revealing nothing inside but a square of black so deep and absolute my headlights couldn't touch it. It was a void. I froze, breath caught in my chest. Every instinct, every primal part of my brain screamed to reverse, to turn around, to floor it and get out of there. But before I could move, before I could even force my foot to the brake pedal, something shifted in that impenetrable darkness and began to step forward. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Let me know in the comments what you think stepped out of that house. Stay safe out there. The night pressed down on the gas station, a heavy, ink-black blanket that swallowed the world. The neon sign sputtered, casting a weak, sickly glow on the fog that coiled around the pumps like ghostly serpents. Inside, I stood behind the counter. My name's Jake. The flickering lights played tricks on my eyes, turning shadows into menacing figures that danced along the walls. Each pulse of the bulb revealed shapes that were almost human, but twisted, wrong. The silence was thick, broken only by the hum of the coolers and the frantic thumping of my own heart. The shelves cast long, trembling shadows across the floor, as if they were alive, whispering warnings of something just beyond my sight. And then, she was there, standing in the doorway, framed by the swirling mist. Her hair was a shock of red, but it was her posture that sent a cold spike of fear through me. She tilted her head at an angle that wasn't natural, her eyes gleaming with a hollow, abyssal darkness. I was frozen, pinned by her gaze. A laugh escaped her lips, but it wasn't human. It was a metallic, echoing sound that bounced off the walls, as if the gas station itself was joining in her cruel amusement. My hand fumbled for the phone behind the counter, a lifeline in this nightmare. Dead. The screen was a void, the line silent. A crackle of static hissed from the receiver, a mocking rhythm matching the frantic beat in my chest. When I turned back, she was closer, so much closer. Her movements were a bizarre mix of jerky and fluid, like a broken doll brought to life. Shadows stretched out behind her, not just passive darkness, but living tendrils of black that snaked across the floor. They brushed against a rack of candy, sending it crashing down with a clatter that shattered the quiet. The lights above buzzed violently, flickering in a chaotic strobe, as if the entire building was having a seizure, gasping for breath. I caught my reflection in the glass of the counter, but it wasn't me. It was still, its face a mask of calm, mocking my terror. It was her reflection, wearing my face. A whisper slithered out from the storage room, soft and sinister. "Jake, come play." It was a child's voice, laced with something ancient and vile. Every nerve, every primal instinct in my body screamed at me to run, to bolt out the door and never look back. But my legs wouldn't obey. They were lead, frozen to the spot. Against my will, I took a step, then another. The storage room door creaked open, an invitation into the abyss. The shadows inside twisted unnaturally, elongating into shapes that defied logic, forms that should not exist in our world. And there she was again, waiting. But her face. It wasn't her own anymore. It was a distorted, shifting mirror of everyone I had ever known, every face I had ever loved. My mother, my best friend, my first crush, all their memories, all those cherished moments, were being twisted and corrupted in her hollow, soulless eyes. The air grew thick and icy cold. From beneath the collapsed shelves, dozens of small, flickering shadows spilled out. They moved with an impossible speed, scuttling across the floor like insects, each with two tiny, glowing red dots where its eyes should be. They were hunting. I scrambled back, my body finally responding, and hit the wall, cornered. There was nowhere left to go. The mimic began to whisper names. Names of people I knew who were long gone. My grandmother, a friend from childhood. Each name was a razor blade against my sanity, digging into my soul. The whispers melted into a cacophony of laughter and screams, echoing from every corner of the store, a symphony of my own personal hell. My mind was breaking. Then, with a sudden, silent lunge, she struck. The shadows rushed forward, engulfing me in a suffocating tide of darkness, and the world went black. When I woke up, I wasn't me anymore. I wasn't behind the counter. I was part of the flickering, an echo trapped in the very shadows I had feared. I could see the store, but I couldn't touch it. I was a ghost in my own nightmare. And she was still there, the mimic, her red hair catching the stuttering light as she moved gracefully through the aisles. She was the new attendant, the new predator, waiting, hunting for the next soul foolish enough to stop for gas on this lonely road. Outside, the mist thickened, a shroud hiding the horrors within. The neon sign buzzed its weak, dying rhythm, a beacon for the lost and the damned. The night had only just begun. And here, in this haunted, lonely gas station, the terror will never, ever end. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next dive into the darkness. Stay safe out there. The gas station wasn't just a place anymore. It had become a prison of shadows. Its neon sign, a lonely beacon in the rolling mist, sputtered and buzzed, casting a sickly light that did little to push back the encroaching darkness. The mist itself was alive, thick and heavy, curling around the old fuel pumps like grasping, skeletal hands. And trapped within this nightmare was Jake. He wasn't solid, not anymore. He was a flickering echo of himself, a phantom caught in a place that was pulsing with a sinister life all its own. Inside, the laws of physics had broken down. The shelves, once neatly stocked, now leaned at impossible angles, their structures groaning under an unseen weight. They cast long, twisting shadows that writhed and danced across the grimy floor. And moving through this distorted landscape was the mimic. She wore the form of a woman with vibrant red hair, but her movements were too smooth, too silent. As she glided between the aisles, her reflection flickered in the cracked glass of the soda fridge. Her eyes were hollow voids, yet they burned with a cruel, ancient intelligence that seemed to dissect Jake's very soul. The air itself was thick with sound, but not the familiar hum of a refrigerator or the buzz of the lights. It was the whispers of the past, the desperate echoes of those who had come before him. A chorus of distorted voices called his name, their words a tangled mess of pleas and warnings. "Run, Jake," they'd moan. "Get out," they'd shriek, but their cries were always swallowed by another sound, the mimic's laughter. It was a high-pitched, metallic shriek, like shards of glass scraping against metal, and it cut through the darkness, right to the bone. From the back storage room, the shadows began to spill out again. They weren't just an absence of light. They were tangible, writhing things, moving like thick, black smoke. They reached for Jake with jagged, claw-like forms, their touch cold and ephemeral. As they brushed against the fallen snack racks and toppled display stands, the metallic clang and crash echoed through the station, as if the building itself were collapsing in sheer terror. The mimic paused her silent patrol, her head cocking to the side as if listening to a silent command. Then, with a speed that defied logic, she lunged. The very air seemed to bend and warp around her as she moved. It grew heavy, compressing and stretching, carrying with it a repulsive scent of cold iron and burnt plastic that filled Jake's lungs and sent a jolt of pure panic through his flickering form. He tried to scream, to let out the terror coiling in his gut, but the sound was swallowed by the suffocating darkness. His echo-like body flickered uncontrollably, growing more translucent as the shadows pressed in. And within those shadows, hundreds of tiny red eyes blinked open in perfect unison, each one a pinpoint reflection of his own fear and their insatiable hunger. Outside, the neon sign flickered violently, its stuttering light throwing the scene into a chaotic strobe. In those brief, terrifying flashes, Jake could see more shadows moving beyond the glass, creeping toward the station. They moved like predators, circling their trapped prey, their forms indistinct but their intent unmistakable. His mind, already frayed, began to spiral. The mimic was whispering again, but this time she was pulling names from his own memory. His mother, his best friend, his first love. Each syllable was a weapon, twisting his happiest moments into grotesque parodies. He saw their faces melt and merge into her own, and for a horrifying, disorienting moment, he felt his own identity begin to unravel, the echoes of his thoughts bleeding into the devouring darkness that surrounded him. A primal survival instinct took over. He lunged for the front door, the word "exit," a cruel joke in the gloom. But before he could reach it, the door slammed shut with a deafening boom, the force of it shaking the entire building. He recoiled, and out of the corner of his eye he caught a reflection in the shattered window pane. It wasn't him. It was a hollow, screaming version of his echo, its hands pressed against an invisible barrier, trapped forever in a silent scream, reaching for a freedom it could never grasp. The red-haired mimic moved closer now. The slow, deliberate pace of a predator that knows its prey is cornered. Her smile widened, stretching her features into an unnatural, terrifying grin. As she advanced, the floor beneath Jake rippled like black water. Shadows rose from the liquid darkness, forming grotesque, clawed hands that grabbed at his flickering essence. They were cold, so cold, and they pulled him down into the inky blackness that promised only oblivion. The entire station hummed and groaned around him, a living, breathing creature enjoying its meal. Outside, the mist thickened until the faint light of the neon sign was almost completely extinguished. In that moment of absolute terror, Jake finally understood. This wasn't just a haunted place. The gas station was a world unto itself, a living trap designed to lure, consume, and digest every soul unfortunate enough to stop. Just before he was completely submerged, the mimic paused one last time. She tilted her head, her burning eyes locking onto his. In a voice that was a chilling symphony of all the whispers he'd heard, she said, "They will come, and I will be waiting." And with that final, terrifying promise, she vanished, melting back into the shadows she commanded. All that remained was the suffocating mist, the shattered reflections of a life unlived, and the flickering echoes of the damned. The gas station stood silent, waiting patiently in the night, promising that no one who entered would ever leave unchanged. And perhaps they wouldn't leave at all. Thank you so much for joining me for this chilling tale. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss our next journey into the dark. Stay safe out there, and until next time, good night. The gas station had fallen into a chilling silence. Outside, the mist swirled around the pumps, slow and deliberate, like spectral fingers exploring their surroundings. I took a shaky breath, the weight of the shadows pressing in from every corner of this lonely outpost. But something had changed. The darkness, which had been so aggressive, so hungry, now seemed to pause as if waiting for a cue. Inside, the shelves stood like silent, leaning sentinels, watching me. The flickering neon sign threw long, jagged shadows across the floor, painting the room in a grotesque light. In the cracked glass of the soda fridge, I could see her reflection, the red-haired mimic, her grin stretched wide and unnatural. But even she seemed hesitant, her movements measured, as if she were calculating her next strike instead of simply lunging. My eyes darted to the storage room door. The twisted shadows that writhed there just moments ago now froze under my gaze. It felt like some unspoken rule had been put into play, a new game with new dynamics. That's when the idea struck me. The reflections, the fallen racks, the scattered mirrors, the shards of glass on the floor, I could use them. I could manipulate the light, distort the reflections, and confuse her. Her whispering voice, which had echoed with such terrifying confidence, now trembled slightly as it called my name. The certainty was gone, replaced by a flicker of doubt, My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the oppressive quiet. I moved swiftly, my sneakers silent on the grimy floor. From aisle to aisle, I placed objects with a newfound precision. A dented hubcap here, a broken side-view mirror there. The shadows flinched as I passed, recoiling from the fragmented light. Outside, the mist curled closer, pressing against the windows, but it didn't dare to enter. The buzz of the neon sign seemed to flicker in perfect rhythm with my pulse. I reached the main counter, my breath coming in ragged bursts, and for the first time since this nightmare began, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. I finally understood. The mimic didn't just create fear, it thrived on it. It fed on chaos and panic. By staying calm, by focusing my mind, I could disrupt its power. I could slow it down. I began to trap the smaller shadows in corners, using angled pieces of metal to create prisons of reflected light. I was carving out a small pocket of safety in the heart of the storm. Then she appeared near the doorway. Her smile was just as unnerving, a slash of red in the dim light, but her steps were slow, almost cautious. She watched me as I adjusted a large shard of a broken window, her voice faltering as she spoke, the sound thin and reedy. "You are learning." I pressed a trembling hand against the cool surface of the counter to steady myself. The neon light bounced off the countless shards of glass and polished metal I had arranged. It cast a web of fractured images across the station, a kaleidoscope of light that seemed to hold a measure of control over the darkness. And for one fleeting, incredible moment, everything stopped. The shadows froze completely, like obsidian statues. The entire gas station seemed to hold its breath right along with me. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, I felt a surge of cautious hope. It was a fragile feeling, but it was real. The bone-deep chill of the mist against the windows seemed to soften just a little. I looked toward the exit, my mind racing. I knew I hadn't defeated her. This wasn't a victory, not yet. But I had carved out a sanctuary, a temporary pause in the relentless terror. As I took a step forward, the shadows began to ripple again, their forms slowly melting and shifting. The mimic's hollow laughter whispered faintly on the air, a chilling reminder that the night was far from over. This fragile calm, this sanctuary I had built, might only last until the next move, the next flicker of the lights, the next haunting echo of my name in the dark. The game was still on, and it was my turn to play. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the shadows. If you enjoyed this story and want to see what happens next, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss an update. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next video.